Hey everyone, it's your favorite semi-bionic man, and today I wanted to talk about techno-romanticism and the future of disability. So basically, what is techno-romanticism? Well, it's kind of like regular philosophical romanticism, which was a movement in response to the Enlightenment, rationality and science, all of those things which were good, which in some way contributed to our modern world now, right? But romanticism stressed emotions, returning to nature, and you know, um the organic human, let's say, um as opposed to the industrial human, right? Machinery and the sort of um gloominess that comes with the pollution of, excuse me, especially early industry, um and also later industry, like in the latter half of the 18th and early, I mean, the latter half of the 19th and early 20th century. And so people are like, wait a minute, we should get back to nature. We should care more about feelings. We should kind of try to be more idealistic. And, this is where you get philosophers. And I really need to read up on, like, Schelling, uh, but also through idealism, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Kant, and then they sort of fracture off into their own, like, anti-nihilism, existentialism, etc. But yeah, it's kind of like the reaction to the enlightenment, basically. Um, and when I say techno romanticism, I mean that in a similar way. But instead of being a reaction of to like the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, techno romanticism to me is um I would consider that a response to the information age and the digital revolution, the computer revolution, the electronic revolution, and primarily against the idea of what they call transhumanism, which is the idea that eventually, um, technological progress will get so advanced that humans will become one with technology and surpass natural evolution. Um, and techno romanticism, at least in my view, and this is a something that I've thought about. I've never really put it on paper, but I've thought about this for at least almost 3 years. I know I'm not the first one to espouse similar ideas, but um would basically say like, wait, no, yes, technology is an important part of, society. It's changed our lives a lot, but we should be more focused on, you know not not going as far as transhumanism, still remembering, that we are flesh and blood. Um, and yes, focusing on human emotions and really the imperfections of humanity, which I think was really one of the anchoring points of the old romanticism. If you're asking me, like, I mean, I don't know, bro. Just think about any Chopin piece or any Liszt piece, right? How does that make you feel, right? It's very flowing, it's very whimsical, but it just feels like freer, right? Like compare that to like a Mozart piece. Obviously Mozart is great and whatnot, and like you know, the Magic Flute is one of my favorite operas, and so is A Marriage of Figaro and stuff, but it still has a lot of order. You don't really feel that much, let's say, melancholy from Mozart and the other classical composers, just as an example. And it's like the one encouraging thing about that is that I do see most people are kind of, they understand, for example, the type of threat that AI um is is presenting to human creativity, and they say no, and lots of schools and colleges are, not to even mention the practical thing of like, well, you're not even really learning anything if you don't do it yourself, arguably. But there is something, again, romantic, techno romantic, um about it, in the sense that, like, there is just nothing really that compares to doing something by your own hand or your own brain. Um, and yeah, in a lot of ways, I sort of see it similarly to the eugenics movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the sense that there was so much optimism around that type of stuff, right? And like people thought they could make um the world a better place, but they failed to really look at environment in people's upbringings, and also like disabilities and stuff like that, and neurodivergencies. And it led to things like, no Germans doing what they did, and Americans doing what they did, um to primarily the disabled. And um that's really um the main issue I have with it, is that in terms of disability, it doesn't really address the main prejudice behind disability. It just wants to get rid of it or supersede it in some way. Now, listen very carefully. I am not saying that you shouldn't, like, do things to try to help your conditions if you have anything. Like, obviously, bro, I've talked about this all the time. Like, I'm physically disabled, I'm in a chair, I use my chair, I love my chair. That's a product of the modern world, modern technology. um and I work out my entire body every single day, because that's the only physical activity that I get. But like, maybe we should be saying, like, hey, we should accept disabled people of all abilities. Yes, um get them to do the best they can, but if they can't do a certain thing, well, hey, that's no one's issue. We're not gonna try and forcibly fix that for the rest of society, because we know how that turned out. And um they count as diverse too. The neurodiverse and disabled count as diverse, especially with recent comments by people like RFK Jr. and seeming to want to start an autism registry and saying that, oh, we can't do anything ever, or we won't ever amount to stuff. I mean, I'm not autistic, but it's clear what he was getting at, bros. And it's like, it's that sort of transhumanistic, that sort of tech bro type of thinking that leads to that. So my main opposition to um stuff like transhumanism and support of techno-romanticism is not that I oppose technology. I love technology. I use it every day. I would not be where I am without it. Another big one for me is Google's natural language processing on Pixel phones. That's literally how I write, guys. That's literally how I got my degree, guys. Like um and so yeah, and in that way, techno romanticism is a lot different from like traditional romanticism in that I think it's not necessarily so, I want to say reactionary, but not reactionary in the politically loaded and in the sense of having a negative connotation. Like it really seeks to integrate um how can I say this? It seeks to integrate technological advancements while still not letting them overtake biological humanity. Um to the extent that someone to in transhumanism where like we become one with the machine basically, because again it doesn't really address the underlying prejudices. It just wants to get rid of them and pretend like they never existed. um and yeah, I feel like we as disabled people, especially if you have some type of physical disability, stand at a midpoint, a crossroads in this timeline where if we don't speak up, we're just gonna get steamrolled. I think that if something isn't done about that in a few centuries, um history will remember us in the category of, and I'm not even joking, and I've seen this in some essays, but cyborgs, like half bionic people, because at a certain point, like your assistive technology, which is just, the technology and devices, and I would say the practices in general, which help disabled and neurodivergent people live their lives, um, does become a part of you. I mean, I wrote a story for the graduate journal at my college about this very sort of thing and the alienation, but also the strong identity that comes from being one with the machine. I mean, not in the literal way of as transhuman humanists want it to be eventually, but in the very metaphorical way, in the sense that like I can't live without my electric wheelchair, and I'm sure many of you can't live without, for example, your hearing aids or even your glasses, or your prosthesis, and like yeah, I think those are hard questions that the community will have to deal with, and that they will determine ultimately the future of disability in the world. But despite its drawbacks, its idealism and its tendency to reduce people to um being docile, or certain groups of people to being docile and having no agency. Because remember, guys, the the romantic era was the era that that really gave us the full flourishing of stuff like the noble savage trope used against indigenous people. And to a lesser extent, like, people with tuberculosis were thought to be like harboring secret genius and stuff like that. And just the romanticization of suffering in general, unnecessary suffering as a sign of greatness, that um is one of the pitfalls of all romantic movements, I think, and one which even I maybe sort of played into, even if unknowingly, right? Where, like, I'm like, oh, my great suffering taught me a lot. It did, but it's also, you know, important to acknowledge the happiness that comes with living as a disabled person as well. But regardless, I still think techno romanticism is an appropriate response to um the the sorts of changes that will happen for not just the disabled community, but everyone, and the decision which everyone will have to make between keeping their organic body as is with, assistive tech not fully integrated into the body, versus the transhumanist vision of a body fully integrated with technology, with RFID, with performance enhancing prosthesis. And no, I don't mean it like that. Get your head out of the gutter, guys. Although, who knows, man? Capitalism will probably have that type of prosthesis too. Um, but imagine getting like a Hitachi attachment attached to your actual dingling, man. But no, yeah, just I just wanted to, put this out there, get people thinking. Um, yeah, thank you very much. Bye.